The plane begins its descent over the Pacific Ocean. Through the window, Los Angeles emerges from the haze, sprawling across the basin like a dream made of concrete and palm trees. The passengers lean toward the glass, cameras ready, hearts beating with anticipation. They have come from Tokyo, from London, from Sao Paulo, from everywhere. They have saved for this trip. They have imagined this moment. Los Angeles, finally. The wheels touch down at LAX. The dream begins, and within minutes, it starts to crack. The plane taxis for what feels like forever, weaving between terminals that seem to have no logical relationship to each other. The jetway connects, the doors open, and the passengers pour into a corridor that immediately feels wrong. The carpet is worn. The lighting is harsh. The signage points in directions that require a PhD in navigation to decode. They follow the crowd toward baggage claim, walking distances that seem designed to exhaust rather than transport. The moving walkways, where they exist, are often broken. The escalators carry them down into spaces that feel more like bus stations than gateways to America's second-largest city. Baggage claim is a crush of bodies and anxiety. The carousels turn slowly, bags appearing in no discernible order. Families cluster around screens that display flight numbers, but not carousel assignments. The wait stretches. 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. The anticipation that filled the aircraft is curdled into frustration. And then comes the true test, getting out of the airport. The exit doors open onto a scene that defies description. Cars stacked 3 lanes deep, all trying to reach the same curb. Shuttle buses blocking traffic while loading passengers. Rideshare vehicles circling endlessly, unable to find their customers. Honking horns creating a symphony of impatience. Exhaust fumes mixing with the famous California sunshine. This is LAX. This is how Los Angeles welcomes 90 million visitors every year. This is the first impression of the city that sells itself as paradise. Welcome to chaos. LAX opened in 1930 as a small municipal airport called Mines Field. It served a Los Angeles that was still growing into its ambition, a city of 1 million people who mostly traveled by train. Nobody imagined what aviation would become. Nobody designed for a future that was impossible to foresee. The airport expanded through the decades in the way that Los Angeles itself expanded, without a master plan, responding to immediate needs rather than long-term vision. Each era added its own layer, its own terminal, its own infrastructure, creating an accumulation of solutions that never quite fit together. The iconic theme building, that space-age structure that appears in every photograph of LAX, was completed in 1961. It represented a moment of optimism about air travel, a belief that flying was glamorous. An airport should reflect that glamour. The building has become a symbol, but symbols do not move passengers efficiently. The current terminal configuration took shape through the 1980s and 1990s, a period when LAX was trying to accommodate explosive growth without the ability to start fresh. The result was 9 separate terminals arranged in a horseshoe pattern around a central roadway. The design made a certain geometric sense on paper. In practice, it created a nightmare that has persisted for decades. The fundamental problem is that the terminals do not connect. A passenger arriving at Terminal 1 who needs to reach Terminal 7 must exit security, walk or take a shuttle along the congested central roadway, and clear security again at the destination terminal. The process that should take minutes takes an hour. The connection that should be seamless requires planning a small expedition. This disconnection was not an accident of growth. It was a choice, made repeatedly, to avoid the expense and disruption of building the connectors that would have unified the airport. Each time the question arose, the answer was to defer. The passengers who suffered from the disconnection had no voice in the decision. The airlines that operated from separate terminals had no incentive to demand integration. The dysfunction became permanent because fixing it was always tomorrow's problem. The airport that greets visitors today is essentially the same airport that existed 30 years ago, with cosmetic improvements layered over fundamental dysfunction. The bones of LAX are old, misaligned, and increasingly inadequate for the demands placed upon them. Architecture shapes behavior. Good design guides people intuitively toward their destinations. Bad design creates confusion, frustration, and failure. LAX represents a masterclass in bad design, a facility that seems actively hostile to the people it serves. Begin with the terminals themselves. Each was designed and built separately, often by different architects with different visions. The result is an airport with no consistent identity, no unified wayfinding system, no architectural language that helps passengers understand where they are and where they need to go. The signage compounds the confusion. Signs point to gates that require walking past other gates that have different numbers but similar names. Signs direct passengers to services that no longer exist in the locations indicated. Signs contradict each other, offering different routes to the same destination without explaining why one might be preferable. The walking distances within terminals are punishing. A passenger at a gate near the end of Terminal B faces a quarter-mile walk to reach the food court, a journey that takes 10 minutes at a normal pace. The same passenger connecting to another terminal faces a total transit distance that can exceed a mile, often while carrying luggage through spaces not designed for rolling bags. The bathroom facilities reveal the age and inadequacy of the infrastructure. Many restrooms are small, outdated, and insufficient for the passenger volumes they serve. The lines that form during busy periods create their own bottlenecks, blocking corridors and adding stress to already stressful journeys. The seating at gates is sparse and uncomfortable. The premium seating that exists is often occupied long before flights board. Passengers sit on floors, lean against walls, compete for the few electrical outlets that exist. The airports of Singapore, Dubai, and Seoul offer lounges, sleeping pods, and gardens. LAX offers hard chairs and carpet that has absorbed decades of foot traffic. The food options, while improved in recent years, remain expensive and inconsistent. A sandwich that costs $8 in the city costs $16 at LAX. The captive audience has no alternative, and the pricing reflects that captivity. Every element of the passenger experience at LAX feels like an afterthought, a problem to be minimally addressed rather than thoughtfully solved. The road system at LAX represents the purest expression of the airport's dysfunction. The design assumes that every passenger will arrive or depart by private vehicle, then provides completely inadequate infrastructure for private vehicles. The central roadway that loops around the terminals carries all traffic for the entire airport. Arrivals, departures, shuttles, taxis, ride-shares, buses, and the lost souls who accidentally entered and cannot find their way out. The road has 2 levels, upper for departures and lower for arrivals. But this separation provides minimal relief because both levels converge at the same choke points. During peak hours, which at LAX means most hours of most days, this roadway becomes a parking lot with occasional movement. Vehicles inch forward, stopping constantly as cars ahead pause to load passengers or wait for passengers who have not yet emerged. The honking's continuous. The frustration is palpable. The exhaust fumes create their own atmospheric layer. The average time to transit from the terminal exit to the airport exit during peak periods can exceed 45 minutes. 45 minutes to travel approximately 2 miles. Passengers who allowed what seemed like adequate time for their connections discover that the airport road has consumed their buffer completely. The pickup procedures for rideshare services add their own layer of chaos. Uber and Lyft vehicles were banished from the terminal curbs in 2019, redirected to a separate pickup lot called LAXit. Passengers must now take a shuttle from the terminal to this lot, wait for their vehicle to be assigned, then located among hundreds of other vehicles doing the same dance. The LAXit experience adds 30 to 60 minutes to any rideshare departure. The process, that should be simple. A car meeting you at the curb has been transformed into a multi-stage obstacle course. The design prioritizes the curb space over the passenger experience, solving one problem by creating several others. Taxi services face similar constraints, though with different pickup locations. The rental car facilities are located off-airport, requiring shuttle rides that add their own delays. Every ground transportation option at LAX involves waiting, transferring, and navigating systems that seem designed to confuse. The traffic extends beyond the airport itself. The roads leading to LAX, particularly Sepulveda Boulevard and Century Boulevard, become congested for miles in every direction during peak periods. Passengers learn to add hours to their airport journeys, treating LAX as a destination that requires expedition-level planning. Los Angeles has spent decades building a rail system that now covers significant portions of the metropolitan area. The metro connects downtown to Hollywood, Santa Monica, Long Beach, Pasadena, and dozens of other destinations. It carries hundreds of thousands of passengers daily and continues to expand. For most of this development, the metro did not connect to LAX. The The absence of rail access to the airport was not an oversight. It was a deliberate choice, repeated across multiple administrations and planning cycles. The reasons varied depending on who was explaining, but the result was consistent. The second largest city in America, building a new rail system from scratch, chose not to connect that system to its primary airport. The politics behind this decision were complicated. The airlines worried the convenient rail access would reduce parking revenue. The taxi and shuttle operators lobbied against rail competition. The neighborhoods under potential rail routes objected to construction disruption. The funding for airport connection always seemed to be needed more urgently elsewhere. The result was an airport accessible only by car in a city legendary for its traffic. The visitors who arrived expecting the convenience of other world cities discovered that reaching their hotels required either expensive taxis, complicated rideshare procedures, or rental cars that would sit unused for much of their stay. A connection is finally being built. The automated people mover, a train system that will link the terminals to a metro station, is scheduled to open in 2026. The project has cost billions of dollars and taken years to construct. When complete, it will provide what should have existed from the beginning, a way to reach LAX without a car. But the decades without rail connection shaped how Los Angeles developed around its airport. The hotels that might have clustered near a train station instead scattered along roads accessible only by vehicle. The businesses that might have located near transit hubs instead chose car-dependent locations. The patterns established by the missing train will persist long after the train finally arrives. The visitors who land at LAX today still face the car-dependent reality. They still experience the traffic, the rideshare chaos, the shuttle buses. The train that should have come decades ago remains a construction site visible through terminal windows, a promise not yet kept. The inadequacy of LAX becomes most apparent when compared to airports that actually function. The global standard for airport design has advanced dramatically while LAX has stagnated. The comparison is not flattering. Singapore Changi Airport consistently ranks among the world's best. Terminals connect seamlessly, with passengers able to walk or take automated trains between any gates in the complex. The facilities include gardens, a butterfly house, swimming pools, movie theaters, and rest areas designed for sleeping. The journey from plane to taxi takes minutes, not hours. The experience is pleasant rather than punishing. Tokyo Haneda Airport serves more passengers than LAX in a footprint that functions with Japanese precision. Trains connect the airport to downtown in 14 minutes. The terminals are clean, quiet, and intuitive. The signage works in multiple languages, genuinely helping rather than confusing. The bathrooms feature technology that American airports will not see for decades. Dubai International Airports processes similar passenger volumes to LAX while providing an experience that feels like a different century. The terminals are architectural statements, designed to impress and welcome. The connections are smooth. The amenities are luxurious. The message to arriving passengers is clear. You have arrived somewhere that values your presence. Even American airports have surpassed LAX. Denver International, despite its distance from the city, offers efficient terminal design and excellent train connections. San Francisco International has modernized with terminals that feel contemporary and functional. Seattle-Tacoma has invested in passenger experience in ways that LAX has not. The question that LAX raises is not whether better is possible. Better clearly exists throughout the world and even within the United States. The question is, why Los Angeles, a city that considers itself world-class, has accepted an airport that is demonstrably inferior to so many others? The answer lies in the priorities that shaped LAX. Over decades, the revenue from parking was prioritized over passenger convenience. The objections of neighbors were prioritized over regional connectivity. The short-term savings from deferred maintenance were prioritized over long-term functionality. The cumulative result of these priorities is an airport that fails its fundamental purpose. LAX has not been ignored by investment. Billions of dollars have flowed into the airport over the past 2 decades, funding projects that were supposed to transform the passenger experience. The money was spent, the chaos remains. The modernization program that began in the 2010s promised a new LAX. New terminals would replace aging facilities. New roadways would ease traffic. New systems would streamline passenger processing. The renderings showed gleaming spaces filled with satisfied travelers. The reality has been slower, more expensive, and less transformative than promised. The Tom Bradley International Terminal completed in 2013 at a cost of over $1.5 billion, represented the most ambitious single project. The terminal is genuinely impressive, a dramatic space with high ceilings and contemporary design. But one impressive terminal does not fix an airport where 8 other terminals remain unready. The automated people mover, connecting terminals to parking and transit, has consumed over $2 billion and years of construction. The elevated guideway now dominates the airport landscape, a constant reminder of improvements that are not yet operational. Passengers walk beneath it, shuttle past it, while waiting for the day it will actually carry them. The consolidated rental car facility, opened in 2019, moved car rental operations off airport to a massive structure connected by shuttle bus. The facility itself is impressive, a cathedral of car rental with dozens of brands under one roof. But the shuttle ride adds time and complexity to the rental process, solving one problem while creating another. The roadway improvements have widened lanes, added signals, and reconfigured approaches. The traffic remains brutal because the fundamental constraint, too many vehicles trying to access to few curb spaces, cannot be solved by wider roads. The cars still stack. The delays still accumulate. The experience still frustrates. The pattern across all these investments is consistent. Individual projects achieve their specific goals while failing to address the systemic dysfunction. The airport improves in pieces while remaining broken as a whole. The billions create islands of modernity in a sea of inadequacy. The question of where the money went has no single answer. It went to contractors, to consultants, to materials and labor. It went to projects that were delivered, more or less, according to their specifications. What it did not go to was a comprehensive reimagining of how LAX should function. The vision was always incremental. An incremental improvement of a fundamentally flawed system produces a system that is still fundamentally flawed. Behind the statistics and infrastructure complaints, LAX exacts a human cost that accumulates daily across millions of individual experiences. The airport workers navigate the dysfunction as a condition of employment. The TSA agents process passengers through security checkpoints that are understaffed and overwhelmed. The airline employees manage gates and lounges in facilities that make their jobs harder than necessary. The custodians clean spaces that were not designed for easy cleaning. The food service workers prepare meals in kitchens that predate modern standards. Many of these workers commute to LAX from distant neighborhoods because they cannot afford to live near the airport. They sit in the same traffic that frustrates passengers, adding hours to their workdays. They earn wages that have not kept pace with Los Angeles housing costs. They serve an airport that generates billions in economic activity while struggling to support their own lives. The passengers experience the dysfunction in ways that range from inconvenient to devastating. The family that misses a connection because terminal transfer took longer than the published time. The busyness traveler who loses a contract because LAX delays made them late for a meeting. The tourist whose first impression of America is chaos, confusion, and contempt for their time. The elderly and disabled face particular challenges. The distances that healthy travelers find exhausting become impossible for those with mobility limitations. The wheelchair assistance that should be readily available is often delayed or inadequate. The accessibility features that modern airports provide as standard are incomplete or missing at LAX. The parents traveling with children navigate an environment hostile to their needs. The family restrooms are scarce. The nursing facilities are inadequate. The play areas that other airports provide to help children burn energy before flights are largely absent. The experience that should be an adventure becomes an ordeal. The international visitors, often arriving after flights of 10 or 15 hours, face the longest walks, the most confusing signage, the greatest gap between expectation and reality. They have chosen Los Angeles as their destination. LAX is their welcome. The message it sends is not welcoming. The stress accumulates in ways that are difficult to measure, but impossible to ignore. Blood pressure rises. Tempers fray. The vacation that should begin with excitement begins with exhaustion. The business trip that should begin with focus begins with frustration. LAX does not just inconvenience people, it depletes them. An airport is more than transportation infrastructure. It is a statement of values, a declaration of how a city regards the people who arrive there. The airport is where first impressions form, where expectations are set, where the relationship between visitor and place begins. What does LAX say about Los Angeles? It says that efficiency is not a priority, that the time and comfort of visitors are acceptable casualties of dysfunction. That the image Los Angeles projects to the world of glamour and innovation and endless possibility does not extend to the experience of actually arriving. It says that problems can be deferred indefinitely, that fundamental flaws in design can be papered over with cosmetic improvements, that the gap between what should exist and what does exist is simply the cost of doing business in a city too fragmented to demand better. It says that the car remains king, even in an era when cities worldwide are embracing transit, that the traffic culture which defines Los Angeles will shape even spaces where traffic is most obviously counterproductive, that the alternatives other cities have embraced will arrive in Los Angeles decades late, if they arrive at all. The 90 million passengers who pass through LAX each year carry these impressions with them. They return home with stories of the chaos, the delays, the confusion. They warn friends and family about what to expect. They factor the LAX experience into future decisions about whether to visit Los Angeles again. The economic cost of these impressions is impossible to calculate, but certainly significant. The tourists who choose other destinations, the businesses that locate elsewhere because their executives dread LAX, the conferences and events that go to cities with functional airports, the soft power that Los Angeles surrenders every time a visitor leaves LAX exhausted and frustrated. The irony is that Los Angeles knows how to create experiences. The entertainment industry that defines the city is built on understanding how spaces shape emotion, how design guides perception, how details accumulate into impressions. The city that produces the world's dreams has somehow failed to apply that expertise to its own front door. The improvements continue. The people mover will eventually open. The terminals will eventually connect. The transit link will eventually function. Someday, perhaps, LAX will provide an experience worthy of the city it serves. But for now, for the 90 million who arrive each year, the reality remains unchanged. The plane descends through the famous California haze. The passengers press against windows, hearts full of anticipation. Los Angeles spreads below them, beautiful and beckoning, and then they land. And the nightmare begins. Welcome to Los Angeles. We apologize for the inconvenience. Actually, we don't. We've been doing this for decades. We're not going to apologize now.